Hey everyone, welcome back to the Stuffy Studios Book Club. Today we're back to read the very last chapter of Meet Samantha. Before we begin, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to Stuffy Studios. It really helps me out. And one more thing, after this episode of the read-alouds will start being posted on Fridays because I have other content that I've been wanting to post on Saturdays, and I don't want to post a lot on the same day, so just keep an eye out for those on Fridays instead of Saturdays. But enough about that, let's get reading. "Nellie's going away," Eddie said. Samantha felt as though she'd been hit. "What are you talking about, Eddie?" "Our driver's taking her back to the city. She's sick and my mother says she's not strong enough to work. She's waiting in the kitchen, and Mother says next time we'll get an immigrant woman who can last longer." Samantha wanted more than anything to punch Eddie in the nose, but she knew she couldn't. She knew that even if she were a boy, she couldn't punch Eddie in the nose. Certainly a grown-up person wouldn't punch Eddie in the nose. A grown-up person probably wouldn't have reached out and shoved Eddie's chewing gum into his hair either, but Samantha did. After all, she was only 9, and that's only half grown up. Then she rushed to her friend, leaving Eddie howling and trying to pull the sticky mess out of his curls. In the Rylands' kitchen, Nellie sat on a wooden chair, swinging her legs and staring at her belongings. They were tied in a shawl at her feet. "Nellie, are you sick?" Samantha asked. Nellie looked up. "No, I'm not sick," she said, "but I still cough sometimes. And Miss Ryland is afraid I'll get sick and be a bother, so she's sending me back." "But Nellie, you'll have to go back and work in the factory. You'll get sick if you go back. And what will I do without you?" Nellie had started to cry. "It'll be all right, Samantha. Really, it will. Only I'll miss you so much." Samantha couldn't stand to see Nellie crying. "Wait a minute, I'll be right back," she said. She dashed across the yard and into her own kitchen. "Mrs. Hawkins!" Samantha cried breathlessly. "Mrs. Hawkins, they're sending Nellie away and her family doesn't have enough food. We have to give them something." Mrs. Hawkins would have been a quick help even without Samantha's begging. In a few minutes she had packed a basket with a pie and fruits, some food in tin cans, and a ham. Samantha ran back to the Rylands' kitchen carrying a basket and something else. She put in the basket at Nellie's feet. Then she placed Lydia in her arms. "Here, Nellie, you take Lydia," Samantha said. "She'll be your friend." Samantha hugged Nellie and stayed with her until the Rylands driver came. Later that afternoon, Uncle Gard and Cornelia were having tea with Grandmary. Samantha was there too, but she wasn't playing and laughing with Uncle Gard like usual. She was sitting in her chair working on her sampler, because even that was better than talking to grown-ups. Samantha was feeling very angry with grown-ups. Grown-ups took her friends away and never even told her why. So she sat and stabbed the needle at her sampler, and everyone wondered why Samantha was in such a bad mood. Then, suddenly, even before she knew she was going to, Samantha blurted out, "I know why Jessie left." Grandmary looked surprised. "You do?" "Yes, she has a baby," Samantha said. Now Grandmary was really surprised. "How do you know that?" she asked. "Nellie and I went to her house at night, and we saw." Samantha was sure Grandmary would punish her now. But Grandmary looked more troubled than angry. "You were very wrong to do that, Samantha," she said. "Well, you were very wrong not to tell me," Samantha answered. She was not feeling very respectful. Grandmary took in her breath sharply. She looked at Uncle Gard and Cornelia for help, but they said nothing. Grandmary put her teacup down and nodded slowly. "Yes, Samantha, I think you are right. I should have told you," she said. The room was very quiet. Samantha felt pleased and relieved. "Well, can Jessie come back?" she said. "Now, Samantha, you know she has to take care of the baby." "But she could bring him with her. He wouldn't bother anybody." Grandmary looked thoughtful. Well, I hadn't thought about that, but I suppose if Jessie wants to, and Miss Hawkins doesn't object, as if anyone could possibly imagine Mrs. Hawkins objecting to Nathaniel. "Oh, thank you, Grandmary," Samantha almost shouted. But Grandmary wasn't used to making mistakes, and she was feeling embarrassed. She changed the subject. "You don't have your doll today, Samantha. Are you tired of her already?" Samantha looked down and felt her face turn hot. No, I lost her." "You lost her?" Grandmary was upset. "My dear Samantha, how are you ever going to grow up into a proper young lady? I try to give you a sense of value, and you—" "I think Sam's sense of value is just fine, Mother," Uncle Guard interrupted quietly. "She gave the doll to Nellie, Mrs. Hawkins told me." Grandmary stopped short. She looked at Uncle Guard, then she looked at Samantha. Then she nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I think Samantha's sense of value is very fine indeed." Samantha ran to her grandmother. "Grandmary, we've got to help Nellie's family. They don't have enough food and they don't have enough coal. Can we help them, please?" Grandmary's eyebrows went up. Then she threw back her head and laughed. "Yes, Samantha, yes. I guess if you care enough to give up your finest treasure, then we can find a way to help Nellie's family." She gave Samantha a proud smile. "You really are quite the fine young lady, Samantha Parkington," she said as she opened her arms to fold Samantha in a hug as warm as summer sunshine. And that is the end of Meet Samantha. How do you think they're going to help Nellie's family? Come back next Friday to see what happens in the next book, Samantha Learns a Lesson. Thank you guys so much for watching, and again, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to Stuffy Studios. It really helps me out. And thank you for joining me on this read aloud adventure.